In a rather shocking turn of events, Netflix has decided to back out of buying out Warner Brothers Discovery, which has let Paramount and Skydance have a free ride in order to buy the troubled studio. According to Variety, and I'm just going to read you the story verbatim, saying, quote, Paramount Skydance is poised to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery in its entirety after a whirlwind afternoon in which Netflix dropped out of the hunt despite having reached an agreement in December to acquire most of WBD. They said on Thursday afternoon that they formally declined to increase its offer for Warner Bros. Discovery after WBD declared Paramount Skydance latest bid a superior proposal to the agreement it already had in hand with Netflix. Now, according to Variety, the Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters said in a joint statement saying, quote, the transaction we negotiated would have created shareholder value with a clear path to regulatory approval. However, we've always been disciplined, and at the price required to match Paramount Skydance's latest offer, the deal is no longer financially attractive, so we are declining to match the Paramount Skydance bid. Warner Brothers is a world-class organization, and we want to thank David Zaslav, Gunnar Winnefields, Bruce Campbell, Brad Singer, and the WBD board for running a fair and rigorous process. We believe we would have been strong stewards of Warner Brothers' iconic brands, and that our deal would have strengthened the entertainment industry and preserved and created more production jobs in the U.S. But this transaction was always a nice to have at the right price, not a must have at any price. It continues on saying, Netflix's business is healthy, strong, and growing organically, powered by our slate and best-in-class streaming services. This year, we invest approximately $20 billion in quality films and series and will expand our entertainment offerings. Consistent with our capital allocation policy, we also resume our share repurchase program. We will continue to do what we've done for more than 20 years as a public company, delight our members, profitably grow our business, and drive long-term shareholder value. The now dead Netflix deal, according to Variety, which included buying Warner Brothers and HBO Max, was valued at nearly $83 billion, and Paramount's latest bid submitted February 24th was cost an approximately $111 billion bid for the entirety of WBD, including its linear cable channels. Zaslav had said, according to Variety, saying, quote, Netflix is a great company, and throughout its process, Ted, Greg, Spence, and everyone there have been extraordinary partners to us. We wish them well in the future. Once our board votes to adopt the Paramount merger agreement, it will create tremendous value for our shareholders. We are excited about the potential of a combined Paramount Skydance and Warner Bros. Discovery, and can't wait to get started working together to telling the stories that move the world. Again, according to Variety, there remain unknowns about how Warner Bros. Discovery will operate under Paramount's ownership. WBD's plan was to spin off the cable channels that ignited the auction process around the studio last fall. WBD was intending to share its linear channels, and the factor that spurred Netflix to get serious about buying Warner Bros. And HBO. However, now that Paramount has gotten free reign in order to make the offer that will essentially buy the company, WBD's significant collection of cablers, including TNT, TBS, the big one CNN, Cartoon Network, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, Food Network, and HGTV, will presumably, according to Variety, will be folded into the existing Paramount Linear Channels group, headed by George Cheeks, who also oversees CBS. And some people have been worried that David Ellison would want to buy Warner Brothers because of the issue that he is perceived to be a staunch conservative and a Trump supporter. Although right now there is no guarantee of astute political leanings that the aforementioned channels will take as a result of this apparent deal that is set to possibly be the final nail in the coffin for what is to be a long and tedious process. But the deal is not going to come without some challenges, according to Senator Elizabeth Warren. She says, quote, a Paramount Skydance Warner Brothers merger is an antitrust disaster, threatening higher prices and fewer choices for American families. What did Trump officials tell the Netflix CEO today at the White House? A handful of Trump-aligned billionaires are trying to seize control of what you watch and charge whatever price they want. With a cloud of corruption looming over Trump's Department of Justice, it'll be up to the American people to speak up and state attorney generals to enforce the law. And for the record, Comcast was also in the running in order to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. However, they seem as though they were just an afterthought in this process, as Paramount and Netflix were the front runners in this scenario. So, of course, the big thing here is going to be CNN. What happens to CNN? What happens to the network's political leanings? They kind of went into the center a little bit, tried to go more to the center, but you could probably tell they were still in the weeds of the left wing, and I'm not saying that's a bad or good thing, that's just how they were. MS Now, wherever they're calling it now, has been taking over the progressive side of the political political spectrum when it comes to their news stories, news coverage, and their punditry. Of course, we all know Fox News, lean right. I've been watching a lot of News Nation lately. I don't know how great that is, but it's a lot better than some of the other mainstream news offerings as of late. You see, be more balanced, but in any event, that's been the biggest hang up here. And even though Elizabeth Warren is going to say that, I don't think that it's going to be that much of a difference maker, because even though those on the left would have rather Netflix buy Warner Bros. Discovery so they could keep CNN on their side, I don't think, first of all, that it's going to change that much. I don't know how much it's going to change. It might be folded into CBS and maybe called like CBS News or something like that. Of course, Bari Weiss is in there, and not many people on the left like her. Again, and this is coming from a left-wing person who has always been, although we gotta allow ourselves to criticize our own side here. There's always this issue, of course, with the consolidation of media conglomerates. There's less and less choice anymore. Everybody's owned by one gigantic conglomerate. However, the Netflix deal was going to essentially probably kill theaters if you take into account what they were going to do, a 45-day window or something like that in the theaters, and then go straight to streaming, and physical media was not going to be safe in the future if that was to take place. So again, maybe this was the best option given the fact that, yeah, this would at the very least keep some films in the theaters for longer. But yeah, you kind of get this sense of, ooh, they're going to move everything to the right wing, which I don't know if that's going to happen. There are going to be some major challenges within these studios. Again, what's going to happen to some of these channels? Cartoon Network's going to have to consider their future up in the air. Their future was already up in the air, but wow, it's getting bad now. And this is after Paramount apparently lost a whole bunch of money recently, and now they're going to be in the hole a lot more when they buy this thing. Now, there is one thing I do want to mention that I don't think a lot of people who are talking about this are mentioning, because everybody's talking about CNN and how that's going to turn out, what's going to happen to CNN, what's going to happen to some of these other channels. But there are a couple things that right now Warner Brothers does at least manage that I want to talk about. One of them is what's going to happen with AEW, All Elite Wrestling. Now, the reason why I say that is because right now Paramount has a big deal with the UFC. The UFC is owned by TKO. TKO also owns the WWE. And from what I have figured, I'm speculating here, is that the UFC deal, the current thing they have now with Paramount Plus, where they're streaming the numbered events, which is a great deal, by the way. Some people were complaining about them running ads on them, and I would definitely take an ad-supported numbered UFC event rather than having to pay $60, $70, $80 for each pay-per-view. And you're not guaranteed that you're going to get a good card on those numbered events. And they may turn out to be duds when they look good on paper. At least with this, they got a great deal here, and I'm thinking that this may be a test to see if a model like that would work, because right now that ESPN deal that WWE has not working out really well. Xfinity has still to get a deal in order to be able to offer its customers ESPN Plus without needing the extra $29, and they may be waiting until after WrestleMania to do that because that's their biggest thing. But everybody knows how to bypass that, the VPNs. Everybody knows how to bypass that. They could just watch on Netflix with a VPN and say they're from the UK. And Stephanie McMahon actually said, hey, just use that. I don't think they even like this ESPN deal. Nobody likes that ESPN deal. And I have a feeling that this is going to be a test to see if TKO can put the WWE on Paramount Plus. They were with Viacom. The WWE was with Viacom before. Remember when, during the Attitude Era, the WWE went to TNN. Raw went to TNN for some years, and they went back to USA Network. Why do I got the feeling that this is a test to see if they can put WWE pay-per-views onto Paramount Plus? I have a feeling. Now, if that's the case, if AEW's main competitor is going to be put on Paramount Plus, that is a big roadblock for AEW to stay in that umbrella. And AEW cannot really afford to lose that kind of deal, because even though some of their storylines are starting to like kind of get good again in a way, they're not at the level they were at when they first started. And wow, some of the things, some of the decisions that Tony Khan Paramount has made with that particular company leaves a lot to be desired. They have to stop worrying about what WWE does and start worrying about their own stuff. And that's one thing. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is that this Paramount Skydance deal adds in the TNT and TBS channels. One thing that's not being talked about, and I think that if I say this, there's going to be some people that tell me what exactly is going to happen to these. The one thing, or two things, that TNT and TBS right now broadcast that they have the rights to are the MLB and the NHL. They used to have the NBA, and that was taken from them by NBC. Now, why is this significant? It's because if anything were to affect those deals, then what could happen is we could see a return of the MLB to CBS Sports, and the NHL would go to CBS for the first time, and I don't think that CBS has ever had the NHL. So that's something to consider, and I'm not sure what happens there. Is there a contingency plan, or if it is called that, is there like a plan in place to where if anything would ever happen to affect who owns what, if there's sports rights goes with them, and if so, what exactly is the process of that happening? I was always thinking that maybe it's not the CNN, maybe it's not the studios that Paramount really wanted, it was the sports divisions, because I have a feeling Paramount's trying to build up their sports offerings, and if they could possibly find a way to get the MLB and the NHL or something along those lines, maybe the NBA, onto their sports divisions, then they were going to find a way to do it. Maybe that's a hidden thing in all of this. Maybe nobody's talking about that. Maybe that was the thing and no one's saying anything. But the other thing here is that if you recall, if you were live back in the 91-92 MLB season, CBS had the rights to the MLB. And many people say that that was a terrible mistake that CBS bought those rights back in the day. And that was the beginning of a major downfall for CBS Sports. And we all know what happened in 94, where they lost the NFL rights to Fox, and that created, for one, Fox Sports, and two, it created what was called the realigning, the Great Realignment, where a lot of local television stations swapped affiliates on the direct result of that. There were a lot of CBS affiliates that switched to Fox on the back of all that. And some of them were owned by New World at the time, I believe, which was a Fox-owned company at the time. So that was the last time that CBS had the MLB. Imagine if what I just said is true and Paramount could possibly have baseball back. What if they could have hockey on CBS? What would that look like? I'm assuming they would have much better announcers now, and the way CBS handles the NFL now, as opposed to what they did back in the day, it's like night and day. And unlike some of the news divisions that Paramount was going to get and all of this other stuff, I have a feeling someone needs to break into that empire that ESPN is trying to get. And I think in that sense, this is a great deal if this includes the sports rights. And someone will have to explain to me if that were to be the case, and if so, what ends up happening there. But all in all, I think that this is going to be very interesting what happens here. I'm also interested in what happens with Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, because that also includes Toonami, and I think that they were going to put Sailor Moon back on Toonami at 5 a.m. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to us? Only for like a couple days, and I think they just dropped it. They just changed their minds, and I think this might be the reason why, because they saw this coming. Like, wait a minute, we got to stop everything because we're going to lose the rights to a lot of stuff. We're going to lose a lot of things, and some people say it's going to be DC Comics as well that's going to be sold off. I don't know, but it seems like there's a lot of money to burn right in the moment for them losing a lot of money. The Ellisons got a lot of money to burn if they want to buy this. But again, imagine if it was the sports divisions that they wanted, and no one's talking about that. No one's taking a gander at this. And if that's the case, that's a big moneymaker, especially if you can wrestle the World Series from Fox, which has held it every year since they got the rights to the MLB. I mean, they could still air on TBS and TNT those games, but would it be interesting if you saw an NHL game on CBS Sports, on your local CBS station, or like a homecoming of MLB on CBS? What would that look like? But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Please leave your comments down below, and also please let me know if anybody knows anything about how those sports divisions are going to turn out, if that's going to be affected by this. I have a feeling they might because of how the rules might work, but I don't know how the contracts are. I don't know if they even touched upon this situation before. Remember, Netflix was not going to buy any of those networks. Paramount is. So that changes what eventually happens to these networks and to that sports division. Definitely AEW. You have to think that if Paramount's going to try to woo over the WWE too, if they want to find a way to get them out of this ESPN deal, and hopefully they would, because this ESPN deal is not very consumer friendly in the slightest, and they're doing nothing in order to address the situation that Xfinity still doesn't have the same type of deal like Spectrum and YouTube TV might. But leave me your thoughts down below. Also subscribe for the latest videos when they go up, and I will see you next time. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other, and to be continued.